Hello there, welcome to Inkquiring Minds. My name is Doug and I'm back with another Pen Resurrection Sunday video. Today's dead fountain pen on the slab ready for resurrection is this 1950 to 1960 Conway-Stewart 58. This Conway-Stewart Model 58 is renowned as the Indiana Jones model because it was featured in the film Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which featured Sean Connery. There is a scene in that film where a fountain pen was instrumental in the plot, and it was this particular model that was used. Conway-Stewart 58 was made between 1949 and 1963 in England. And what I'm going to do today is show you what the pen looks like beforehand, triage the pen to see what it needs to be resurrected, and then walk you through the process of my restoration of the pen. YouTube tells me that you folks skip ahead to find out what the pen looks like after restoration, so I thought I'd give you a preview. So let's do that now. Let's show what the pen looks like with all of its scratches and so forth. On the top of the screen, unscrew the cap and show you what the pen looks like uncapped, and we'll look at what the nib looks like before restoration on this side and after restoration on the other side. That way you don't have to watch the whole video to see what the results are. Those of you interested in the results can follow along. I've identified this particular Conway-Stewart 58 as a model that was made between 1955 and 1963 because it has on the barrel where it says Conway-Stewart 58, that's all in one line. Before 1955, the Conway-Stewart had the model number on the second line, and of course it says made in England. There are no date codes on this, so you have to determine the date by other means. I've done a restoration of a Conway-Stewart 58 before, and I sold that pen, and I kind of regret I sold it because it's such a nice fountain pen for the age. These were a little bit thicker pens than the pens of the era. Say the Parker Vacuumatics and the Parker 51 pens were slimmer than this, and this pen posts nicely and has a nice, thick, substantial feel in the hand. Has a really nice section to it as well. And you can see my previous restoration of one of these 58s by clicking right up there. Now let's triage this pen to see what it needs to be resurrected to the land of the writing. The top finial is very similar to a Parker Vacuumatic. The black conical point, jewel that sits inside the clip, and that clip is very, very loose. In fact, I think it might just fall right out if I turn that jewel enough. Yep, there it goes. So there's the jewel that fits in the top. It's plastic. There's the clip. The clip is in good shape. It's not bent, and it is gold filled, so that should polish up really nicely. Let's put it right over here for the before look, and then we'll see what it looks like over here. The cap has lots of wear on it and abrasions, and there's a couple of divots right there where the clip has been sitting for many years and knocking into that celluloid resin, so we might be able to polish that out. And there are 3 cap bands, 2 thinner cap bands and 1 thick one in the middle. It looks somewhat like a British officer in the Navy armband, doesn't it? And it's in really good shape. The cap unscrews, and there is the section and the nib. And it is a 14 karat gold nib, and it says Duro Conway-Stewart 14 CT gold. And that Duro on there indicates that this is a premium offering from Conway-Stewart. So that was their premium gold nib. There's a bit of a slope to the section where the nib goes in, and there is the ebonite feed. And then we'll take a look at the barrel. There's the lever, Conway-Stewart logo on it, and it does not move, does not even budge. So there's an old desiccated sac inside this pen. Lots of wear and abrasions and old gunk on this barrel. Now the Conway-Stewart logo is a little bit faint where it's been worn from a hand using the pen over the years. The 58 is very deep, but the made in England is very faint as well, so I'll have to be careful not to lose that. And the bottom finial is conical as well. So the first thing we need to do is put all these bits in the ultrasonic bath of pen flush, which I make myself. It is 9 parts distilled water and 1 part ammonia. Put that in for 2-3 minutes, not a long time. Never soak your vintage pens in pen flush overnight. If you want to soak them overnight, soak them in distilled water. So after they're out of the bath, I'll rinse them off with some clear water, and then we'll see whether we can get that section off of there. I might have to apply a little bit of heat. So the cap and the clip are still sitting in the bath, and this is after about a minute. A lot of old black ink came out of that nib, but because that lever won't move and I can't get the section off, wasn't able to get any of that pen flush back into the barrel. So let's see if we can get that section off now that we've loosened some of that ink. You notice that the nib is looking brighter already, just with a minute in the bath. I'll get a little gripper material here, see if I can give it a turn. Oh, there it's moving. There we go. It's coming out. Oh yeah, okay. There we go. There's the latex sac still attached to the nipple of the section. There's the very large feed, and on the inside you can probably see that old desiccated sac still sitting inside there. So I'll have to do a little bit of scraping and soaking and scraping and soaking with my dental tool and the pen flush and try to chip all that old desiccated latex out of there. There's some pieces of it right there. So I'll dig away at that, and I'll scrape some of this old latex sac off of the section here with my X-Acto blade. That's petrified right there, so there's no elasticity in that latex anymore. So we scrape that down, and it should just chip off. But in the interest of finger safety, I'm going to do that off camera. Otherwise, I'll just cut myself. Probably get good ratings for that. So there's the nipple of the section. I've chipped all the old shellac and latex off of it, and I'll put this whole thing back in the bath for a couple of minutes, and then we'll try to knock that feed out. So let's take the nib and section and put it in our knockout block. Get out the rod and give it a couple of bashes with the hammer to see if it'll loosen. Yep, oh, it's coming out easy. That's always a good sign. Lots of old ink inside that section. So this will go back in the bath as well. And let's see the nib. There it is. It's looking cleaner already. Look at that. And it looks to me like it is a broad. I might end up keeping this pen. Look at that nib. It's in perfect shape. And here is the ebonite feed. We'll polish that visible side up and put it back in the bath and get all that old ink off of there. And then we'll polish up the section. No major scratches or gouges out of that section. And here's the nib all polished up and brand new. Isn't that gorgeous? And I'm stoked that this is a broad, or at least a medium broad. Can't wait to test it out. And here is the ebonite feed, all shiny like a piano key. And here is the section, all cleaned up, top and bottom. And that nipple is all clean of all that shellac and old latex. And I polished up the clip at the same time. So there's the clip with the Conway-Stewart logo, the diamond on the bottom. It's a very attractive clip. It's a reminiscent of the style of the Parker Vacuumatic clips, but with their own unique shape. I like it. So now I'm going to dig out all those remnants out of that barrel. We'll get an inspection camera view of the inside and see how that pressure bar is faring. And there we go. I got the major parts of that old latex sac out of there, and let's go in with my inspection camera and take a look. And it looks pretty clean. There we go. I'll operate that lever and see that it's working nicely too. Now we're going to throw that away. And what I want to do now is test that nib. So I'm going to put the nib back together with the feed, and we're going to put it back in the section and drop the section in the barrel, and we're going to do a dip test. So let's see if I can get some gripper material on this nib. Get it lined up as best I can. It's going to be about there. Feels a bit slippery, so I might have to heat set that nib and feed. Let's see if it'll go back in without any pressure or heat. Yeah, it actually goes in very well. You take that feed right to the bottom. There, make that flush with the bottom, and then check the alignment on the nib and feed. Yeah, it wants to slide around in there. Yeah, we're now misaligned a little bit. Yeah, it might mean that I need to heat set that nib on the feed to keep the feed from pushing the nib around. I'm going to do a little work on trying to align that nib. You can see it sitting up a little bit now that it's sitting on the feed. So I took the nib and feed out of the section again, and you see that it's actually aligned pretty nicely. So I think it has to do with where I'm placing that nib in the section, where it was originally sitting. So I'm going to try resetting it again to see if I can rotate it into a position that doesn't distort that nib. But when I press it on the feed, you can see it pushes that nib up. So relaxed, it's like that. On the feed, it's like that. So I think I've got it well aligned now. It was finding the sweet spot in that section and on the feed, the right distance, so that it didn't push the nib, the tines out of position. So now I'm going to do my first dip test here. Dip it in some Watermans and see what we have. This is, I'm going to say this is a circa, let's say 1956. Conway-Stewart 58. So this is ultra smooth. This is the smoothest vintage nib that I've worked on. They all end up being a little bit scratchy. Over the years they get corroded or whatever. You say, well, gold doesn't corrode. You say, well, gold doesn't corrode, but the tipping isn't gold. And so that corrodes over time, and it will cause some scratchiness to the tip of the nib. This is a very broad nib. Let's see what we have horizontally here and what we have vertically. It's a bit stub-like, and let's see what we have in terms of flex. Wow. Oh my goodness. Be still my beating heart. This is one of the best vintage nibs I've ever worked with. Let's get out our pad here and see what our line widths are. Very wet nib. So our horizontal lines are 0.5 and the vertical lines are 0.9. And let's do a flex and see what we get. And in flex we're getting 1.2. So this is 0.5 millimeters on the horizontal, 0.9 on the vertical, and when you flex it, it goes all the way to 1.2 millimeters. Zowie. Zowie. Okay, and I'm all excited. Now I'm going to take this. Oops, got on there quite tight. There we go. Take the section off and put that aside and work on my cap and barrel and see whether we can polish those up. There's a lot more damage on the cap than there is on the barrel. But we'll polish those up with some micro mesh. I will go from 1500 grit through 12,000 grit with the micro mesh. I'm going to mask off the gold here. I'll polish that with my buffer tool, that gold lever. And any deep scratches and deep gouges like that one there, I'll use 400 grit on that to get that divot out of there. And we'll come back when they're polished up. So here we are with the cap and the barrel all polished up like it's brand new. And that imprint is still there, and all the gouges are gone. So that gouge that was underneath the clip is no longer there. So let's put the clip back on the cap and see what it looks like. Now, first of all, I want to make sure this lines up. I like it to line up with the lever. We put it right there. Sort of misaligns with a breather hole, but it's the way they make these things. Breather holes seem to be all over the place. Some pens have them almost together, some of them opposite sides. This one has one down here and over here, so they're on like 3/4 sides, not opposite. There must be a reason for that. So we're going to put the jewel back in. I'm just going to put a card under here so I don't damage the cap while I do this. I'm just going to tighten that down and get it to tighten to there. It's slightly off. Not bad. Looks pretty good. So now all we have to do is resack this section and put it back in the barrel. So let's do that right now. Get out my shellac pen from the Inky Nib and the number 16 size sack, and we're going to put the sack in the pen and figure out where it needs to be trimmed to. So that section will come to there. That means the sack will come to just the bottom of those threads, right? And we don't want the sack to go all the way to the bottom. So I'm going to put it about there, pinch it about there. This isn't rocket science. Measure with a micrometer, mark with chalk, and cut with an axe. Precision. Let's just trim it right there. And we can test fit it. Put it on the sack spreader. Doesn't slide as well when it hasn't got the shellac on it, but that should be good right there. Seems to be working. And we take it back off again and see that it comes to almost to the bottom. And I'm just going to rough up that surface of the nipple with a little 400 grit sandpaper. Don't do this at home, especially not to your own nipples. It's very abrasive. There. Just roughs it up a little bit to make the sack and the shellac adhere nicely. And then we can dial up a little bit of shellac with our pen and paint some shellac all the way around. Now we put the sack on the sack spreader again and fit it up underneath there. And I'm always careful to give it a little bit of a twist. And if I got any shellac on my fingers, to wipe it off first. I know this from experience. I don't want to get it on that section. Then I'd have to polish it off. Let's get it fit right up against there. Then I'm going to use my shellac pen again and just paint a bead of shellac around that seam. That ensures there's no leaks through there, and it adds a little bit of shellac just to that bit of the section. When I force this back into the barrel again, that will keep it from rotating. And it's only a little bit of shellac, so if anybody needs to resack this pen in the future, a little bit of heat will release that little bit of shellac. So we'll let that dry for 12 hours or so and come back and put it back into the pen. And that's where we'll need our talc to make sure that the latex doesn't adhere to things inside the barrel, especially that pressure bar, because that's where you get tears over time if it gets stuck to that pressure bar. Okay, so it's several hours later and that shellac is completely dried. So let's put that back in the pen. Get out some pure talc and spread it around the parts that might stick to the inside of the pen. I'm going to get some gripper material on this barrel because I want to line up that nib with the lever. Slide it into the barrel, line up the nib. Yeah, damn it. Got some of my rubber matting stuck in there, so now I need a little bit of heat. There we go. That's all lined up perfectly, and it should line up. There are 3 starts to that thread. There we go. That lines up perfectly. Now we want to fill it with ink. So the first thing we're going to do is get out the scale to check the capacity of the pen. Uncapped. It's 9.37, 9.34. Make up your mind.
Make up your mind!
There we go. Get out some Watermans and give it a good pull. Let it go and leave the section in the ink for a second, and then give it another pull, and then one more for grinners. Let it sit there for several seconds while it inflates. Count 5 or 6 steamboats, and then put it back on the scale. And that's pretty good. 1.12 milliliters of ink. And we're ready to write. Post the pen. Here we go. Boy, that's amazing. Smooth with just a hint of feedback, just a hint. And this is with no pressure on that nib at all. It's just floating. So this is a broad nib. And if you want to flex it, look at that. It'll flex. And it's juicy. Oh my goodness, it's juicy. Look at that. So I call that a success. What do you think? So I'll come back with my thoughts about this resurrection in just a second. Right now. So what are my thoughts about this fountain pen resurrection? Oh, snake!
I hate snakes, Chuck! I hate them!
Well, my first thought is I'm going to keep this pen away from my snake pen rest, because Indy hates snakes.
Enough is enough!
I have had it with these
flipping
snakes on this
flipping
plane.
My second thought is that I'm not giving up this pen. So if you waited this long to see how much I was going to sell this pen for, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but this pen isn't going anywhere except my next pen club meeting. Wynn is getting her silver Yardled Pocket Victorian for Christmas, and I'm getting this 1950s. I'm just going to pretend this pen was made in the year of my birth. Conway-Stewart 58 with the, oh my God, it's so juicy and beautiful.
This is juicy.
14 karat gold broad nib for my Christmas. Ha ha ha. Ho ho ho.
Ho, ho, ho.
And my third thought is about the resurrection itself. Well, it couldn't have gone better. Other than having to fiddle to find the sweet spot of the nib feed and section to align that nib perfectly, this resurrection was almost easy. I had to scrape the remains of a fossilized latex sac, but other than that, success. I know many of you subscribers have become members lately to get first dibs on these resurrected pens. But don't worry, in the next few weeks I'll be doing resurrections of the following pens that will be selling because I can't afford to keep them. My Visa bill is due. I have 3 already in my hands. One is a 1942 Parker Vacuumatic Debutante in Emerald Pearl. And then there is a 1946 Parker Vacuumatic Junior in black. And a 1947 Parker Vacuumatic Standard in Golden Pearl. And in the next week, or just after Christmas, I'll be receiving a 3rd generation Parker Vacuumatic Standard in Azure Blue Pearl, a 3rd generation Parker Vacuumatic Standard in Silver Pearl, and a 1940s Parker Vacuumatic Duovac Speedline filler in green striped celluloid. I resurrected one almost identical to this one a few weeks back, and you can see that resurrection by clicking right up there. So that's a total of 6 new old Parkers that will be coming your way. I'll sprinkle in some Watermans and a couple of Parker Parkettes as well. And I got some really great news from my friend Frank Jung, the CEO of Narwhal Pens. He's sending me, in addition to 3 Narwhals to review, yay, a Wall Eversharp Skyline, because Narwhal has purchased the classic antique pen brand. You heard it here first, folks. I don't know if it'll require any restoration or whether it's even an antique. And Narwhal owning Wall Eversharp is news to me. I thought they were owned by the Pen family of ASC, Armando Simoni Club fame, which I also thought owned the modern incarnation of Conway-Stewart. What goes around comes around. And we need answers. Inkquiring minds need to know. And there you have it. Merry Christmas, all of you that celebrate. Happy festivities over the remaining part of 2025. And I'll be seeing you before 2026, as I'll have another couple of videos for you next week. And you can join as a member of my channel for only 99 cents a month, and I guarantee I'll answer your comments in the comment section. You'll get cool emojis, badges, sneak peek unboxing videos, as well as instant access to my videos the moment I post them. And now basic members get 10% off, and $5 a month patron members get 20% off resurrected pen purchases. And that just leaves it for me to say thank you for watching. Ooh. And that's all she wrote. That's nice.
I made this.